Hi, how y'all doing? Welcome to our show. My name is Tyler Griffin. I'm the Vice President of the Winthrop College Republicans.
And I'm Leslie Lowe. I'm the Secretary of Affairs.
And today with us we have Congressman Trey Gowdy, who chaired the Benghazi Committee and represents the Greenville-Spartanburg area. So thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start off with really what issues are most important to you?
Well, at the national level, national security is the preeminent function of the federal government. There are other functions that are uniquely federal. Certain issues can be handled by the state and in different regards are handled by the federal government. Law enforcement would be an example of that, but there are certain things that are indigenous to the federal government. Immigration, national security would be among them. I think the issue that's kind of weighing most of my mind right now is what I call branch equilibrium or constitutional branch integrity. What's the executive branch designed to do? What's the legislative branch designed to do? What's the judicial branch designed to do? The legislative branch, in theory, was supposed to be, or the fear was that it would be too powerful. Far and away the most powerful of the three branches. It is currently, without question, the weakest of the three branches, and how to kind of restore that equilibrium that our framers had in mind. In terms of non-constitutional issues, something Senator Scott and I are both interested in for professional and personal reasons, racial reconciliation. Our country and our state has a provocative and rich history as it relates to matters of race. And Senator Scott and I are both convinced that while there's a role for legislative remedies, it's really relationship-based, it's trust-based, it's perspective-based, and that's kind of something he and I are going to pursue together, at least for the next year, 2 years. Racial reconciliation and point to our own relationship is kind of a way to start that process.
That was beautiful, Mr. Congressman. Speaking on the judicial branch, I watched you when you were dealing with the farmer bro, Martin Scarelli, and I just loved it. And he kept pleading the fifth, and you were like, and you asked him one question, what is his name or something, and he said, and like, oh, so you can talk, and then he went back and said something to his lawyer, and he said, I plead the fifth. But going off of that, how was it like to chair the Benghazi Committee?
Well, very different from being a real lawyer. There are rules in a courtroom, and there are investigatory tools that I had at the DA's office and the U.S. Attorney's office. An investigative grand jury, subpoenas, witnesses, no time limits. The legislative branch is not designed to conduct investigations. That's the executive branch. So we did the best we could. The other thing that's different is the Democrats not only were not interested in finding out what happened in Benghazi, they obstructed us at every turn. And I'll just give you the most benign example I can. You would think if you were interested in finding out what happened in Libya that you would want to talk to all the witnesses and access all the documents. The Democrats had no interest in talking to witnesses, including eyewitnesses who were on the ground that night, and they had no interest in us accessing documents. So I get that people, casual observers, may think that committee was politicized or there was an effort to politicize the committee. The reality is when almost half the members of the committee have no interest in talking to eyewitnesses. I mean, think about the absurdity of investigating a bank robbery without talking to the tellers, or the absurdity of investigating any matter without talking with people who have firsthand knowledge. But that's what the Democrats wanted to do, and the media was complicit in that. The media, one of my favorite media stories was that Elijah Cummings, who was the ranking member on that committee, his job was to make sure Republicans didn't overstep. That's the way they framed it. It wasn't that his job was to protect Secretary Clinton, that his job was to obstruct. It was to make sure that we didn't do anything wrong. If the media really believes that the Democrats on that committee were knights and knightesses in shining armor, there simply to make sure that truth and justice prevailed, then they're every bit as dumb as I suspect they are.
Well, one of the most frustrating parts of just kind of watching from 2012 onward, because I was only a sophomore in high school when it even happened, was that the story was so different for whoever you asked, and it was just a matter of, like, we wanted to know what actually happened, and it was odd that Democrats didn't really want that, it seems.
Yeah, Republicans, I think a lot of people kind of made up their minds on the narrative on both sides. And so I was in that perhaps small constituency, I don't know, that just let's start fresh. Let's talk to all the witnesses. If you can debunk a myth, whether it's held by the right or the left, that has value. But you can only do that if you have access to the witnesses and the documents. So just how difficult it was to get the names of certain people. Pilots. I mean, the Department of Defense knew who the pilots were that night. So why not give us the names? But it took months and months and months. So the legislative branch is not designed to conduct serious investigations, and we either need to give ourselves the tools to do it, or we just need to concede to our fellow citizens that we're going to do the best we can, but you're going to be disappointed.
Right.
As much as we were able to do, there's still witnesses and still documents that we didn't access even after 2+ years.
And I remember when you brought up Representative Cummings, I remember watching a clip of him basically apologizing, saying that to Miss Clinton when y'all were investigating her, saying that I'm sorry that you're here and everything that's going on. You know, this is just some conspiracy theory, almost what he was trying to say.
Yeah, I remember too, because Ty Wood's widow was also there that day, and I thought it would have been nice if some of the Democrats maybe had apologized to Ty Wood's family, Glenn Doherty, Sean Smith's family, Chris Stevens. We interviewed, out of the 100 witnesses we interviewed, one was named Clinton. Most people can't name 10 other witnesses we talked to.
Yeah.
The media was hyper-focused on her. The Democrats were obsessed with her. We interviewed well over 100 witnesses not named Clinton. But that was what their focus was. It was on protecting her. People can judge that as they will.
Well, something that's going to be different coming up in 2017 is that we're going to have a Republican-controlled executive branch and a Republican-controlled Congress. So what's something you're most looking forward to doing in the coming years?
Doing something. Instead of passing bills that will never be signed, whether, I think Mr. Trump has earned the right to set the agenda. He won the Electoral College. He had the courage to run for president, and he's much more popular than the legislative branch. So we need to find out, assume arguendo, I have 10 priorities. Well, you need to tell me the order in which you want them to take us up. Is it border security? Is it interior security? Is it tax reform? Is it repealing the Affordable Care Act? Is it replacing, on the heels of that, repealing? How would you like us to start? And I think he's earned the right to make that decision. And then we will legislatively follow suit. Now, this is where it gets dicey. Our framers did not give us political party tension. They didn't even give us tension between the media and those of us in office, although it exists. They did give us branch tension. Good, solid, fundamental, well-intentioned branch tension. So, we need to do our jobs, which is appropriations on the House side, advice and consent on the Senate side. And I think it's a pretty unique opportunity for Congress to reclaim some of its authority that was either taken or ceded to presidents of both parties in the past. I know Paul said last week that he had spoken to the president-elect about the constitutional roles of the executive and legislative branch. And I'm sure the Speaker feels this way, and frankly, most people, regardless of your politics, ought to feel this way. A weakened to the point of barely being necessary legislative branch is not in the Republic's best interest.
Right. Yeah.
But we got to start with the appropriations process. That's the best tool the framers gave us, and we need to start that early on in 2017.
That's perfect. Being a former prosecutor, do you still have admiration and appreciation for the judicial branch? And if so, going forward, how do you feel about with the Supreme Court nominations?
Oh, I do. I have friends that are judges, and it's a co-equal branch of government, although it has a very different function, and it requires humility and restraint to be in that branch. It is one thing to look at a law and say it is constitutional. I'm going to follow it, even though I never would have written it and never would have signed it.
Right.
That takes restraint to be able to say that. Human nature is you never should pass that law. Let me find a way to make it not applicable. So I admire the humility and restraint that job requires, but it does require both of those. So when I see Supreme Court justices that find liberty rights and the penumbra of the Fourth Amendment that no one else has seen for the last 200 plus years, that is not a very humble thing to do. When you ignore state legislatures and the will of the Congress and start citing international law and what other countries have done on issues like the death penalty in Roper versus Simmons, that is not humility. So, yeah, it's really super important. In some ways, a president's greatest legacy are those women and men that he or she places on the Supreme Court.
Do you still follow the South Carolina Supreme Court as well?
A little bit. Justice Beatty, very soon to be Chief Justice Beatty, was a judge when I became a district attorney in Spartanburg. I've known him for a long time. Johnny Few and I clerked for the same judge a year apart, way back when. Phenomenal judge. I appeared before him. I never tried a case in front of Justice Beatty, but I tried a bunch of cases in front of Justice Few, and he, great trial judge. I have a lot of respect for Justice Kittredge. I'm trying to think the other two justices, Justice Hearn, and I'm missing one, but I'm missing them probably because I hadn't been down there in a while. But the three I know, I've had great experience with. I do follow it, but I don't have a vote. Nobody really cares what I think. So.
Other than that, moving on to a more personal segment of this, what is something about you a lot of people don't know?
That I have a really good looking wife. They wouldn't guess that probably. Probably that I don't like conflict. You would think, because what they usually see is some clip or something. But if my wife were here, she would tell you that in terms of just our personal lives and when the kids are home, I am a conflict-averse person. I want everybody to get along. I try to, my daughter has different political views from my father. I would rather them not discuss politics. I just, when you live conflict for a living, you don't want to come home to it. So I'm lucky. My wife's idea of conflict is whether to decide to watch this Hallmark movie or that Hallmark movie. That's her idea of conflict. She doesn't really follow politics. That's great. Can't imagine coming home and getting a lot of work advice. She didn't know any of the cases I was prosecuting. I never came home and told her the facts. So I would think people might be surprised that I really, I'm not a huge fan of conflict outside of when it's necessary.
Well, so you're actually our 10th interview that we've done this year. Earlier,
I feel lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky number 10. And earlier we got to interview Congressman Mick Mulvaney, and we asked him the same question. We wanted to show you what his response was and get your reaction to it.
Let's see. I used to play a lot of golf when I was younger. I still play just enough to keep me competitive with Mr. Gowdy, although he beats me. He cheats. So you can tell him I said that. Gowdy cheats.
So we've done Congressman Mulvaney's request, and we've told you what he said. So what is your reaction to that?
I guess initially just how old he looks in that video. I guess you just, when you're around somebody a lot, I was just struck by how old and out of shape he looked in that video. Mick is super smart, and I didn't know him at all before we both ran for Congress. And the four of us that came in together, Tim Scott, Jeff Duncan, Mick Mulvaney, and myself, I spend an awful lot of time, particularly around Tim Scott in the Senate and Mickey in the House now due to committee assignments. Mick is incredibly smart. He works very hard. He's very conscientious. We do play a good bit of golf together. I think all the times we play, I think he's won twice. So the fact that he played high school golf came as news to me. I don't know what high school team would be bad enough that he could make. He'd only beaten me twice out of about 100 times.
I guess one thing that's nice to know, though, is, the delegation has that good bond together, though, that you guys can, joke around with each other and, have such a good dynamic with each other.
Well, I would tell the people in South Carolina that is rare. There are delegations in Washington that can't even enjoy a meal together, and that's just the Republicans. We actually, all of us, have a great relationship with Mr. Clyburn. In fact, he was one of the first guys I called the day after the election, which he probably doesn't want me telling you all that. It probably doesn't help him for people to know that we do get along, but we all get along. There's a time and a place. I walked out yesterday after votes with a lady named Tulsi Gabbard. Politically, Tulsi and I don't vote together much at all. What I like to tell people is she's a Hindu from Hawaii, and I go to a Southern Baptist church in South Carolina. You'd never put the two of us together. But again, I don't like conflict unless you have to have it. And I respect the fact that she wore our country's uniform. She's one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet. She's authentic. She's real. So the disagreement part to me is way down the list. Maybe I could persuade her based on our friendship. Maybe she could persuade me on a particular issue. I don't require people to agree with me on issues for me to have a relationship with.
Yeah.
There's enough in life. Mr. Clyburn is a husband. He's a father. He plays golf. He loves South Carolina. That is enough for us to spend an hour at the airport waiting on our flight together and not argue.
Yeah.
I've actually never had a crossword with Mr. Clyburn about anything. Now, with Mick, it's impossible to not have a crossword. He just brings out that side of me. But not Mr. Clyburn.
I wish the political science department was like that. And speaking of controversial, did you see the thing that came out in the news from the Hill yesterday talking about the desk being moved?
I did see that.
What's your reaction to that?
Dr. Freud wrote extensively about defense mechanisms, rationalization, projection, and Mick projects his own inadequacies onto other people. I had nothing to do with his desk being moved. I didn't know he had a desk. I've never seen that much work coming out of his office, so I was surprised to hear that he had one. Of all the things I worry about in life, where his desk is was nowhere on my list. I found it instructive that he immediately falsely accused a colleague. That told me a lot about who he was. No, he told me that his desk was missing, and Mick and I are about to the same point in life. Yeah, of all the things in that desk, it's the things that he couldn't replace that had him the most worried. His grandfather's watch and a letter that his dad had written him the night that he first won. So all the rest of it you can replace. You can, it's just wood. You can go make another one. But Mick is very family-centric. And I don't mean this as a criticism. I mean it as a compliment. Mick's a sentimental guy. Family means a lot to him. And, when we got off the plane yesterday together, when we walked into our cars, he showed me his wristwatch. And it was the one that he'd gotten out of his drawer that his grandfather gave him. Probably doesn't even work. And it's old. Nobody can go buy it now. But I was happy he found it.
Yeah.
Sorry that he falsely accused me. Thankfully for me, he lacks credibility so much that nobody believed him.
Moving on from that, what is your message to young voters who are not involved in politically or just hearing about just Trump rhetoric or anything? What is your message to them who are just unclear?
Well, first of all, I would say this to your generation, and I'll tell it to my kids. Y'all are fantastic in that y'all are not judgmental. Most young people I run into are incredibly accepting and understanding of the differences that we have in life. So continue that. This is the advice I'd give you. You can believe what you want to believe. I'm not here to tell you what you ought to believe. But you got to be able to explain why you believe it. And you have to see beyond the tweet and see beyond the bumper sticker. My daughter is 19, and she's got a bunch of friends that have a different view on the issue of marriage than I do, and the definition of marriage. So you have to be able to sit down with someone and then kind of in a constructive way walk your way through it. Do you believe you should be able to marry your father? And most of them say, no, that's gross. Okay. Should you marry your brother? No, I don't want to marry my brother. Should you be able to marry your father and your brother? Well, no, I don't want to do either one of those. So you agree the state can regulate marriage. You just said you did. All I'm saying is it should be regulated here. You're saying it should be regulated there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we agree it should be regulated. Just, y'all aren't judgmental. My experience with talking to young people is they don't want to be told, you're wrong, you're crazy. Walk them through the analysis, but that requires them to have an interest. Just understand the decisions being made today are going to impact your life. So I want you to be involved, but I need you to be engaged if you're going to be involved. I had a meeting with a young person this morning, and I think she said there are two sides to every story. There are at least two sides. Sometimes there are five sides.
Yeah.
Just hear out the different sides. Then make an informed decision on what you believe and be willing to defend it. You want to tell me you're a Bernie Sanders supporter? That's fine. Tell me why. And then as we walk through this notion of what free college, the word free means, just be open-minded that maybe I'm missing something.
Right.
And I will be too. I'll be open-minded that I'm missing something.
For our last question, with it being December and with Christmas coming up, what is your favorite Christmas tradition that you have?
Watching my wife decorate the tree while I watch football.
That sounds pretty good.
Let me think. My father, we've always read the Christmas story. I think I can probably cite it, certain parts of it. That's a tradition with my broader family. I don't know that I've ever celebrated Christmas without both my parents and all three of my sisters there. In terms of our own family, my wife and our two kids, just the way my wife loves Christmas. So just the way she decorates the house. There's still a letter to Santa, although with a 24-year-old and a 19-year-old, I'm not sure who reads it. She still leaves food out for Santa. There are stockings for our dogs. I don't recall them writing letters to Santa, but nonetheless, somehow he is well acquainted. I'd say they're reading the Christmas story for the broader family, and just when my wife decides it's time, the day after Thanksgiving, when we start decorating for Christmas, we open our gifts on Christmas Eve, and she has grown in that she will allow me, if there's a game on, to have the television on, but the volume down. And the deal is, if she catches me watching the game when one of the kids is opening a present, it goes off. So you just have to be kind of creative when you catch a glance of the game.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this for us.
Thank you all.
Really great interview, and that's all we got. So thank you so much.
All right.
Sir.
Y'all be
Thank you.
careful heading back to
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Rock Hill, okay?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, thank you.